Hey, listen, so it's the early 1970s. I was probably 19 years old doing the news on WYRE in Annapolis, Maryland, where the Naval Academy is. And I was covering all the midshipmen with all their little sports cars and the ceremonies and climbing up a greased pole, which is one of the things they do before they graduate,
Right.
and throw their caps in the air. And attending, one of the guys who was there was a fellow from Maui named Larry Doong. I didn't get to meet him back then when both of us were in Annapolis, but I met him the other day because we were here on the ship, the battleship Missouri, of which he was the last chief engineer before decommissioning. Let's look at some more of that interview. Much retrofitting, or were you substantially working with the original design?
A lot of times we'd find out after it was decommissioned. For instance, when I was aboard, we had some motors that shorted out. And when we pulled the motor apart and took a look, it had square wire on it. Well, that square wire went out way back before we even came aboard. So we had to take all the wires off and retime it, rewire it, and do a whole lot of changes to it. We found out that a lot of the pumps that go down because of wear and tear, like wearing rings or impellers on a pump, when you open up and look for the tech manual to find the parts, that company went out of business in 1965. So that's why we have such a good machinery repair shop, because we end up making the part in order to fix our pumps and keep our motors going.
How do you feel, Larry, when you look back at your service?
I love it. I miss it. I had been on 6 ships. This was about the best you could ever have. There was more pride on this ship, more camaraderie than any ship I'd been on. It was also, being the oldest, surprisingly the cleanest. Well, you know, every so many hours throughout the day, every times throughout the day, they pass the word sweepers, which means you come out, sweep the passageway, dump your trash and things like that. On a lot of ships, you have to go out and look, is anybody doing it? You have to pull people out, go out there and clean it. Over here, it was automatic. As far as the eye could see, there were people cleaning, because that's the kind of pride. If anything dropped along the way, a piece of paper, whatever, somebody would pick it up. Coffee cups, you don't walk around with a coffee cup that didn't have a cover. They had to have covers because we don't want coffee spilling in our passageways, or for you getting hurt going up and down the ladder with a cup of coffee. So I love this ship, and I love the captain and my executive officers that I work for. But more importantly, I love the people who work with me. They were terrific.
And there's some lessons in that for anybody working any job. Yeah, and the lesson is what I've always told you here on the show. Good morale is too important to leave to management. Now, apparently there was incredible esprit de corps on the battleship Missouri, not least of which was from people who had ever been deployed on any other ship.
Really?
Because in comparison, the Missouri was first among equals, very, very special.
Wow. And I think that's part of what we've learned here today and in the past weeks, is that we got to tour with different people who had very different perspectives and different experiences. And I think overall that's made this whole day for us much richer.
Yeah, in fact, the gentleman that took me around, his name was John, and the first thing he said is, you know, I'm going to tell you one thing, there might be another perspective that's out there, but just bear with it. There's a lot of history, and they're still learning.
You know, and we've talked to people who were here when the surrender papers were signed back in 1945, and we've talked to people who've just recently become volunteers here at the Battleship Missouri. I mean, of all ages, of all generations, and all have shared some unique perspective, and it's just been fascinating for all of us.
It absolutely has. All right, well, we have a few minutes left. We're going to be back here on board the USS Missouri as sunrise goes on the road on Veterans Day.